So, I heard these three people that were in an airplane, and the airplane was falling. The engine failed, and now the airplane was falling, and they had only 2 parachutes. And the 3 people were one scientist that was considered the smartest man alive. Second person was the Pope. And the third one was a Boy Scout. So immediately after looking at all the problems that the airplane was having, the smartest man alive said, sorry guys, I'm needed for the world. I'm considered by many the smartest person alive. So can you believe it? He takes one of the parachutes, put it on, and he jumps down the plane. Then the Pope looks at the Boy Scout and said, you know what, son? I'm living a long life. I would like you to save your life. So take the last parachute, jump, and live your life. And the little kid said, no. It's okay. We still have 2 parachutes. What do you mean? What happened with the other guy? No. He said, the smartest man alive jumped with my backpack. I want to talk to you today about where are you? Where are you? Where are you? You'll say why. But first, as I promised at the beginning of the service, remember I told you that Purim and this Parsha are somehow connected. And I don't think it's a coincidence. Many times of the year this happens. And sometimes we have a holiday, and then whatever we are reading in the Torah is actually connected to that holiday. Even though the Parsha is not talking specifically about that holidays, but we have common themes. Specifically, this Parsha, this Torah portion, and Purim are connected in many levels. I told you one at the beginning of the service, and it's all about the clothing. This Parsha, lots of descriptions about clothing for the priests. And on Purim, we also know that it's all about the clothing, masquerade, costumes. So they're connected. But there is something else that is very interesting. And it's the fact that on Purim we read Megillat Esther. And it's the only book of the Torah that does not contain the name of God. You know that? The book of Esther does not contain the name of God. Even though lots of miraculous things happened and they have a fast, right? Why would you fast if it's not as part of a prayer? But the name of God itself, explicitly, is not mentioned in the book of Esther. Only book in the Torah. And at the same time, same week, Parsha Tetzave, the only Parsha in the Torah does not contain the name of Moses. Name of Moses, after Moses was born, right? Before Moses was born doesn't make any sense. But after Moses was born, this is the only Parsha, the only Torah portion that does not contain the name of Moses. Moses is missing. But let's talk about Purim first a little bit. Because according to the rabbis, Purim is the holiest festival of the Jewish calendar. Which is crazy. If you ask me, Rabbi, what do you think is the holiest festival of the year? Well, my first reaction will be Yom Kippur. Right? I'm pretty sure many of you will think the same way. Yom Kippur, come to synagogue, you fast. Everything is about the soul, the spirit. So it has to be the holiest festival of the year. But no, the rabbis say that it's Purim. In fact, Yom Kippur is a short name of Yom HaKippurim, which, by the way, literally in Hebrew means the day that is like Purim. Yom HaKippurim, like Purim. So Yom Kippur and Purim are also connected. Fascinating. But also the rabbis say that after the coming of the Messiah, all the festivals will be obsolete. There is no more need for that, except for the festival of Purim. We are still going to celebrate the festival of Purim. What is so important about Purim that it makes it so holy, even more than Yom Kippur? What is there? Well, let me start by telling you this story. Actually, it's funny. I sound like one of the books that my son likes, which is Captain Underpants. That it always said at the beginning, well, before I tell you that story, I have to tell you this story. So before we answer the question of why Purim is so holy, I will have to tell you what is going on with the book of Esther. All the stories narrated there represents the first generation of Jewish people after the exile, after the destruction of the first temple. Remember, King Nebuchadnezzar, invaded the kingdom of Judah, destroyed Jerusalem, and sent all the Jews to leave to Babylonia. Then a generation later, then the Persians came and took over, and this is that generation living under the Persian Empire, but it's the generation that they were born in exile. They didn't have all that connection to the land and to the temple that the previous generation had. Remember, we used to have a temple in Jerusalem. Now they didn't have it anymore. So this is the first generation after the exile, and it wasn't easy because the rabbis say that while the temple existed, was a different time, a different situation for the people of Israel. God's presence was, how can I say it, explicit. We didn't have to look behind veils and analyze our lives between lines to try to find the presence of God. God was present in a different way while the temple existed. We had the prophets that they were sent by God. After the temple was destroyed, there were no more prophets. Prophecy ended, and the relationship between God and the people of Israel was different. In fact, there is a prophecy in the Bible, in the Torah, in the book of Deuteronomy. Specifically says, Va'anohi, says God, Va'anohi, haster astir panai bayom ha'u, al kol hara asher asa, kifanav el Elohim acherim. The prophecy says, I'm going to hide my face in the future because of all the evil that you, people of Israel, are going to do, and because you are going to turn to other gods. And the rabbis explained that this generation, the book of Esther, is actually the generation that is experiencing this prophecy. God is hiding God's face. God is not present the way he used to be present before. So they couldn't see God in the same way. Think of it this way. Talking about Pesach that we talked at the beginning. When we think about Pesach, when the Jewish people had a problem, what did they do? They cry out to God, and God sent a miracle, 10 plagues, right? Then God split the Red Sea, and they could cross. So whenever the people of Israel had a problem, God will send a miraculous solution. The book of Esther, things didn't happen that way. They were having a problem. They cried out to God, but God didn't show up with this kind of flashy miracles because there were different times. Their way to relate to God was different. It's not that God wasn't there, but as the prophecy said, God was hidden. In fact, this is interesting. That's why the book of Esther is called Esther. Esther means hidden. As God said, Vanohi haster astir. Same word. Same word. What God was hidden, but doesn't mean that it was not present, just hidden. And it was, the amazing thing of that generation is that they were able to see the hand of God even though it was not explicit the way it used to be before. Think of it this way. It's easy to believe in God if you experience the kind of miracles that the Israelites experienced in Egypt. Be honest with yourself. If you will experience the 10 plagues, if you will experience the splitting of the Red Sea, wouldn't you believe in God? Of course, everybody will, because there is no way to challenge that. But if you read the book of Esther, well, you have to actually push yourself to believe that God had something to do. Because a casual reading of the book, it will actually, it looks like, well, yeah, maybe they were just random things that happened, and at the end they were lucky, and they could save their lives. Even the name of the holidays, Purim, means lottery, seems to imply randomness. But it was not. It was the hand of God that it was there all the time. And the rabbis say that Purim is the holiest festival of the year because it represents a moment when humanity was able to appreciate and to discover and to experience the hand of God even behind that veil. When you can reach the same level that the Jews reached on Pesach without experiencing God the way they experience it, then it's telling you that this festival of Purim is the holiest festival of the year because it's talking to us. It's talking to our own reality. It's talking to our own fears, doubts, and challenges. We challenge to say this, to see the hand of God. We are challenged to recognize the miracles. But nevertheless, Purim says that with all the limitations that we have, if we want, we can discover God in events that seems to be random, in events that seems to be natural. We can discover God in nature as well. But there is more. Because as I mentioned before, in this week's Parsha, also the name of Moses is missing. And I think it's all related to the same thing. Because in these days, sometimes we cannot see how we fit in God's plan. Yeah, go back to the Torah. It was very clear. God was telling people what they're supposed to do. And they knew what their role was in God's plan. But we don't have that anymore. We have, again, challenges to see the way we fit into God's plan. We feel invisible. The same way Moses is invisible in this parsha, but nevertheless we know that Moses was extremely important, even if his name was not written. So this is also a message for each one of us. Sometimes we believe that we are invisible, that we don't count. God doesn't care about us. And it's all the opposite. Because we are precious and invaluable for God, because even though we cannot see it, we all have a role to fulfill in this world. In the same way that in the book of Esther, God's name was not written. But nevertheless, we know that God had a specific role to play in that story. So, if sometimes you feel that God is not there, look again. Because perhaps you are not able to discover God behind the veil yet. And if sometimes you feel that you're invisible, that you have nothing to offer to the world, look again. Because this parsha is telling us that we are all invaluable and necessary in God's plan. Shabbat Shalom.